Hi everyone, my name is Leena Patel. I am the CEO of sandbox2boardroom.com and author of Raise Your Innovation IQ, 21 Ways to Think Differently During Times of Change. And I'm here today to talk about success strategies for sales account managers in a COVID/post-COVID era. I'm talking with Cory Alexander, who I'll introduce you to in just a moment. He is an account manager at Cisco in the PSDS region, and he reached out to me about a month ago and wanted to meet and share some of the strategies that he'd implemented by reading my book around performance and productivity, around dealing with a remote work environment, how he'd improved his relationship with his customers and just brought more revenue in just by implementing some of these strategies. And I was so inspired by what he shared that I thought it would be really fun for the two of us to get on this live call today so that he could share his journey and what he had implemented with you, because I think this is something that could really help a lot of salespeople and even sales leaders if they're looking to, if you're looking to drive higher performance from your team. A lot of things that Cory has done here, I think, can really work for people across the board. So a little context here about why I wrote this book. I wrote it pre-COVID, so the summer of 2019. And at the time, I was seeing a lot of disruption happening in the world across industries. I mean, the world was moving at a fast pace, and I saw that trend happening a lot. And I wanted to empower individual contributors, leaders, top leaders, executives with tools and strategies that would enable them to think differently about change, to shift their mindset, to give them ideas on how they could introduce new products, pivot their business, to take advantage of the change and the disruption and really sort of position themselves as leaders in the marketplace. So I think all of that really is relevant today more than ever, because COVID simply 10x'd the speed at which we're moving today. And I think we've got the technology piece, but we've got all these new things, new challenges that we're faced with today. Supply chain, quiet quitting, a lot of challenges that organizations and individuals in the company are dealing with. So still relevant today. And I want to introduce now Cory and allow him to share his journey of some of the things that he's implemented and things that I think that everyone can really learn from. So Cory Alexander, welcome.
Thanks, Leena. Great to see you.
Great to be here speaking with you. Cory, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're kind of out here on the inside of an organization, kind of seeing that, what is your perception of the challenges that leaders are faced with right now? Even, teams, leaders are faced now, just even like within Cisco, but also within the industry at large. Any sort of common themes and challenges that you're seeing that need to be addressed?
Definitely. And so I think the best way to kind of go to approach that would be like, if you think back to, let's say, January of 2020, like, COVID was right on the cusp there. And so I think a big challenge that, every organization faced was, how do you move remote? And how do you make sure that, the interactions you're having with people, with customers, with employees, that they're still engaged and fulfilling? And so I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me that actually led me to kind of reading your book was, how do I approach things differently? How do I adapt to change? But yeah, the challenges, they haven't really gone away. There hasn't really been a framework on how to, handle all this massive amount of change that seems to continue to change, as week after week. And that's led to, quiet, like you mentioned, quiet quitting, workforce challenges. And then you had, to tie into that, the supply chain and all the challenges that brought. And so it's just been a lot on employees on how to mitigate and handle all of this constant change. And that's where I was in a frame of mind to say, okay, I need to go out and do my own research on how to kind of really just look at change differently.
So what did you do? And what did you do? Kind of rewind the clock back to what you were personally going through that made you pick up the book.
Yeah, so it was 2021, summer of 21, when I found your book the first time. And I was just looking for, something to read and try to just really change my mindset. And so I read through the book and I agreed with a lot of what you said, but at that time, I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to really go out and say, okay, I want to really make a change and implement what I'm learning. And so then fast forward to December of 21, around Christmas time, I test positive for COVID. So I'm in quarantine, can't really do a whole lot. So I go back and revisit your book. And I think at that time, I refer to myself as kind of a hamster in a wheel, just kind of going through the motions, still performing very well. But, for me personally, it wasn't necessarily fulfilling. And I could also feel for my customers and my teammates, it wasn't really fulfilling for them either. And so I picked up your book again and I was like, I really asked myself, like, are the things that I'm doing, are they hurting or helping me? And so, in the book, you talk about the ALTA process, which I'm sure we're going to kind of touch on today. But that was kind of what I call the aha moment, or the second Burning Man moment, if you will, on when I really wanted to make a change in what I was doing.
Great. So I like that. Just to kind of give a little bit of context for anyone who's listening. So the ALTA process is really a 5-step process, and ALTA is an acronym for Ask, Listen, Trust, Thank, Ask. And I dive into each of the steps in more detail in the book. But essentially, it's a process that allows us to kind of rewire our brains in a way and pause everything that we think we know as experts, as leaders, and be open to new ideas, new possibilities, new approaches. And so I thank you for sharing that, Cory, because I think one of the sort of things that I notice talking to leaders throughout companies, multiple industries, the sort of common trend is, or common theme is that the more experienced you are, if you've been doing your role for 5, 10, 20 years longer, the easier it is to just say, I know this. I know how to do this. I know how to approach this. I know I'm the expert. What's been working for me for all this time is obviously what I'm going to do going forward, because I'm going to rely on my past experience. And I think with all the changes and the disruption and everything that is going on in the world, in our industry, that's been thrown at us, that you mentioned, that requires us to think differently. That means that requires us to put aside actually what we think we know and be open to new ideas. And it teaches you how to do that. So I appreciate you sharing that, Cory, because I think that for me, that's a foundation. Like, it's a stepping stone to just saying, to being open to change. I don't know if that's what it was for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, let's dive right into some of the wins, some of the strategies you employed that kind of move the needle for you. So the first one I want to talk about is the strategy that I call give it a new twist. And this is really just about making small changes that really move the needle, that really change things up, really quick, easy things. Cory, tell me a little bit about how you took this idea, how you implemented it.
Absolutely. So I'm almost laughing now just because of like when I think back on how I used to do things, it's almost comical. But, for everyone listening, we live in a society now where you have access to everything virtually. And, during the pandemic, everyone was working from home. And so all these interactions that we were used to having in person are now remote, and everyone's just staring at a screen. And so I continue to have these meetings with my customers called business reviews, where I get on about once a month. We invite the entire team. It can be anywhere from 10 to 30 people. And we just kind of present on trends in the market, products that are coming out, roadmap, thing like that. And what I started to notice when we started doing this was that attendance was slowly dropping month after month. It wasn't engaging. It was hard to keep attention when it's virtual. And so when I was going through the book and talking about, like to your point, giving it a new twist, I had to think, like, what would engage me? Like, what could I change in how I'm presenting material and make it engaging, fulfilling, and that the information will be retained. And so, you talk about actually in one of your TEDx talks, gamification or making it game and making it fun. And so I just made small little tweaks to my presentation. For example, like how many times have we joined a virtual meeting and not everyone has shown up yet, and there's just kind of that awkward silence, if you will, of just kind of like waiting for everyone to join. That wouldn't necessarily happen in a boardroom meeting. People are going to say, hey, how was your weekend? Things like that. So what I did was I played, it's 5 o'clock somewhere subtly in the background. And so there was like this music when you joined, and it kind of changed like, oh, what kind of meeting is this? And then at the end of the meeting, I put together like a quiz and said, there's gonna be prizes. And so after that first initial try at that, we saw engagement and we saw attendance, go up, 10x over the next few months with that. And so it was just making that small little tweak to how I present and how I engage with customers and employees and whatnot had huge dividends later on.
So tell me a little bit about, so you saw the number of people attending go up. Tell us kind of what that, like where, when your attendance was low, how many people were attending roughly?
I can think of one specifically. We cast it out to probably 30 people, and then we saw attendance drop as low as 5.
Okay.
So and then
it dropped to, go ahead. Sorry. It
dropped
to,
sorry.
So it dropped to 5. No, so it dropped to 5. And then when you started implementing some changes, making it more fun, making it more engaging, using some of the gamification and gamification principles, what was the result? How many
It was actually kind of shocking because it was kind of it was obviously word of mouth, because when we first tried it, again, probably 6 or 7 people showed up when we tried it that first time, but then word of mouth got out of how engaging or fun it was, because that the next time it got up to 15 and it continued to grow from there.
Amazing. All right. So that's a significant 3x improvement at the minimum over a couple of meetings. What was the result, though? At the end of the day, your customers are attending, the leaders are attending. What was the result for them? Or how did your relationship change? Did it speed up the sales cycle? Did it what happened as a result of them attending?
It was very multifaceted. So obviously it was engaging in the sense, especially for employees at this particular company that I had never met before in person. It lowered that bar of like I don't want to say professionalism, but it just made it more like it was a conversation versus just a one-to-many presentation. So it definitely strengthened relationships. It kind of shifted mindset a little bit as far as, okay, this isn't just another boring, I used to say PowerPoint is like the modern anesthesiologist. It'll put people to sleep rather quickly. And so, by making it engaging, they're retaining the information, which then leads to conversations further down the road. Countless times I've gotten emails like, hey, like, remember when you mentioned this in that presentation, like how would that, dovetail into our organization, things like that. So, and then ultimately that leads to increases in revenue and you name it. So it definitely had very multifaceted approach to that.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that because they're attending, because they were engaging in the material in a more proactive way, that it led to deeper conversations. It led to more engaged, more kind of personal conversations, that they were proactive about reaching out, about their kind of wanting to know more about the product, more about your offer. That's amazing. So I think, and one of the things, the salespeople, we all know relationship is key to everything, of course. And if we're not if we're not breaking down those sort of superficial barriers and really getting to the humanness, or really getting to the core of the problem that the customer is experiencing, the sale, we're not moving down the sales cycle. So I love that you basically were able to just speed that up. You were able to get to that place where you were having those conversations with your customer that much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So the second strategy that I want to talk about is a strategy in my book called Walk and Talk. And this is really the idea that when we're at our desk, oftentimes we're just sort of stuck in one way of working. And actually just when we when we actually move, just being actually physical, it just fires up a different part of our brain that allows us to be more creative. And when we're going out and having meetings in this way, that changes sort of, levels of playing field when you're going out and walking with somebody and strategizing and talking. And there's times to have them and there's times to not, that I share in the book. But specifically, I think, Cory, you took this on to approach sort of how you were engaging with material and training material and content in a different way. So tell me what you did. Tell me what you were going through and what you did as a result.
Yeah, and so when I read that part of your book, I always tie it back to, like, I was ready to make a change. And so I kind of call it micro goals. And so I started looking at, like, okay, how do I engage in meetings today? And so it's a lot of multitasking. We're inundated with technology these days, and then remove the social interaction that we're also used to, remove that, and then you're just kind of like left with your own thoughts, and you're constantly getting buzzed and vibrated from your watch or your phone or email or whatnot. And so I think for me it was very challenging just to maintain focus. And so when I started moving the meetings that were applicable to walking meetings, I would just put headphones in, I would join the meeting, and maybe it was a meeting that I didn't necessarily have to present on or had very little speaking parts. It's really great for trainings. I would just walk around the neighborhood, and not only was I paying more attention, but there was like a part of my brain that got activated to really ingest what was being presented, and then also think about how I could take what I was learning or being presented on and apply that to my customers, to my coworkers, and things like that. And so it really just kind of, it's very hard to multitask, one, when you don't have your laptop with you, or if you're just kind of moving on a treadmill or whatnot. It activates a part of your brain to just really allow what I call free thinking.
So what did you do? I mean, can you give us an example of something, like where you applied this, where it freed you up to think in a new way?
Definitely. So a couple months ago, we were tasked with, joining a training on, advancements in the security industry within the organization. And at the end of the training, the task or the call to action was, we want you guys to create a pitch deck of yourself recording what you learned and present and record it and send it off. And so, normally I would have probably approached that as, I just need to check a box that I did the exercise and move on with my day. And I had taken that training call walking, and so fully, engaged and immersed in what was being presented. And so when it came time to put my presentation and pitch deck together, I really gave it 150%, and it wasn't really going anywhere other than just going to be reviewed internally. And so I submitted my deck, and I got first place in the exercise. But what really paid dividends was that because I had taken the time to really sit down and structure what I wanted to do and take what I learned, that I didn't even need the deck. I've been in countless meetings now where I can just the content is so fresh and so remembered that I can just present now and have that meaningful conversation with the customer and sound like I know what I'm talking about because I'm just so engaged with it. And so that was huge for me.
You do know what you're talking about. You don't sound like you know. Yeah. But no, I understand what you mean. And that's a great example, by the way. And I love that, that the customer directly benefited from that. And I think you're touching upon a theme that I see a lot that companies are challenged with right now, is how to enable their people to thrive when, we've been in remote/hybrid for a couple of years now, but I think a lot of companies are still haven't sort of employed a strategy to help their people to make that transition effectively. And I think for a lot of companies, their default has been, well, we need to get out there. We need to get out there and talk to our customers because that's what everybody was doing pre-pandemic. And that may be a solution, but I think that another way to look at it is just, because sometimes, you might want to go meet your customer, but your customer is now not able to meet you in person because they're working remote and that's their company mandate, as an example. Right? So you're faced with these actual real life challenges. And I think one of the things that I think companies need to address is how do we empower our people to be able to work with technology so that it serves them? Because we're experiencing this kind of burnout, the Zoom fatigue, the kind of checking out. And this is just one simple strategy that costs absolutely nothing, kind of going out there and shifting things. But I think there's room here for companies to be more strategic in the way that they're training their people so that they're not disengaged, not on purpose, but I'm seeing that as this sort of ripple-on effect over the last couple of years, that it's derailing results, it's causing high levels of disengagement, and it's even leading to retention and hiring challenges as well down the road. So I think that sort of to kind of piggyback off your story and your example, I think it seems to me that it's key that companies learn how to sort of establish some best practices, be able to assess their team to understand what's working for them, what's not working for them, and put some new agreements in place. So just just an observation that I think that that needs to something for leaders to be thinking about. The next strategy, actually the final strategy that I want to talk about with you today, Cory, is called Team Up with Your Rivals. And in Raise Your Innovation IQ, I use this strategy to in the context of, well, if you're an executive, if you're a leader, who are your competitors in the marketplace? For Cisco, it's going to be Microsoft, Azure, Google Cloud. Who are the people, or for salespeople anyway, who are the people that are out there? Who are the companies, or what are their products that are in direct competition with yours? And oftentimes, our strategy is to sort of, kind of keep our sort of do our thing in isolation. And oftentimes, and I come from a sports and athlete background as a former dancer. I've worked with sports people and athletes for many years before I moved into consulting. And one of the strategies that we employed in training is to sort of seek out somebody who was our rival. Like somebody who was better than us, and we would train together. We would go to the gym together. We would go running together. Because I sort of noticed for myself that when I was with them, I would push myself that little bit harder. So it's something that athletes are very familiar with. And I thought that if corporations partner up with each other in a strategic way, how much more value could they add to the marketplace? So Cory, you took this idea and you employed it in a different way. You put your own twist on it, really. And can you share a little bit more about what you did?
Yeah, so when I was, reading through that chapter, I was again going back to, goal setting or micro goaling. And I was, there was a person on my team that was consistently number one, like every quarter after quarter, number one, number one, number one. And I'm friends with this person. And so I was like, obviously they're doing something right that I can learn from and challenge myself with. And so I created this rivalry that this person didn't even know existed. This was completely something I did. But I challenged myself and set the goal of I'm going to beat this person. And so that led to just every engagement I had, just making sure that is what I'm about to do going to get me to the number one spot? Down to where I would actually call management and be like, hey, where do I rank right now? Like quarter to date, where am I at? And just constantly checking to make sure that I am, getting myself to that goal. And the dividend paid off because I beat this person at the last half. I was the number one sales person in my region. And that paid off in not only in recognition, but also in revenue for the company, things like that. So it definitely, it pushed me outside of my comfort zone, outside of, what I thought was, normal. And taking that willingness to try something different. And so it definitely helped out. So
that's amazing. So if you were to put a dollar amount or even a percentage, sort of, what would you attribute this strategy in terms of sort of what you were on track to perform at or deliver, and then what you ended up doing as a result of implementing this?
Definitely. I mean, like if let's just say that I was on track to hit, 100% of of my sales plan, and then in that half I hit 152%. And so, and that equated to, multi-million dollar increase in revenue. And so it just really, proved to me the strategy works. And then also, looking at it now, how do I take that same strategy and apply it to competitors, apply it to, different, vendors in the market and things like that. And so it continues to evolve for me.
That's amazing. And my numbers brain, my metric brain is firing off right now because I'm thinking, gosh, if you just multiply that ratio by the number of salespeople that are within the organization, the revenue jump that would equate to is mind blowing, and that's just by implementing, just a few strategies in this book. I would love to unpack that further. I think that's amazing. So, Cory, thank you so much for sharing this. I think your results are amazing. They speak for themselves. I think it's incredible that you took the initiative to go on this journey of transformation and bettering yourself. And I think it's really commendable. Sorry. Any final words? Any kind of like big takeaway or something that you'd like to share that you've learned or that you think that other people would sort of benefit from at this time?
Definitely, yeah. And so I think, one of the concepts in the book that, I constantly have to remind myself of is the, looking for singles and doubles versus the home run. I think, as a society, we get so focused on the big win that we lose sight of the small stuff. And so it's the small things that add up to the big win. And so, as we've talked through today, the single would be like just making a change in how you present. Or maybe the double is, walking during meetings. These small little changes can have such macro change or macro effects later. And so that is one thing that I really, want to reiterate today is just, making the small change is the first step.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cory. Thank you for sharing with us. I love that. If you're interested in learning on how you can get some quick wins that you can implement, there's tons of action steps here with every strategy that I share. Go check it out on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, whatever you prefer, or go to your library and read it for free. I don't mind. Just go and implement, go and get results because that's what it's here for. We're here to succeed. We're here to thrive. And if I can help in any way, and for those of you out there that are really looking to make a quantum leap, to put an initiative in place in the next 30 to 60 days, you'd like some insights that are specific, unique to your situation, to your industry, to your organization, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to give you a few pointers and a few insights that might help move you further along. With that, thank you so much. Thank you, Cory. And I can't wait to see where you go with this in the next 6 months. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Leena.